Okay, I can get us going. Today will be in English because even if we are in Denmark, we still have somebody who is not doing Danish, and there might even be someone coming from far away. Like Tom, I understand that you are still in the early part of the day. Welcome to Agility Lab. My name is Morten Elvang, and we are in the process of reviving Agility Lab a little bit because there are urgent things to do. So we're having a campaign at the moment, actually 3 campaigns. We have a little mini campaign looking at PI plannings and big group plannings, and my former colleague Marit Glancy will present on that in December. Then we are looking at the medium-sized enterprises and what does it actually mean to help them with agile coaching, because their need is definitely going up. But I think we have a situation where neither agile coaches nor the medium-sized companies really know what to do with each other, even if some of us have started to dip our toes in this water. And then finally, there is the big, beautiful question of where's Agile going, the state of Agile. And Kurt, really happy, actually super happy that you said yes to join us today and talk about not only the state of Agile, but also sharing a few insights from your experiences in working with the medium-sized companies. So welcome.
Thank you. So, do you want me to get on with it? Okay.
Yes, please.
Thanks for the
But take your time to get ready if you want
Yeah,
to share.
no, I'm ready, and yeah, I plan on keep this going for about 30 minutes, and then we can have some discussion, so you can discuss with each other. It's not that I am an expert in this area. The only expertise I can claim is that I have tried to pivot a number of times and been unsuccessful a number of times. I prefer to call them experiments, and hopefully I learned from those failures. But right now we are in the middle of another pivot in many ways, and since I'm an older guy, I've decided to take the approach of W. Edwards Deming when he was about 80 years old, which I'm not, by the way. And he got rediscovered in the US, and he said, what the hell can they do to me? I'm 80 years old. I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm not going to hold back. So that's a little bit of my attitude today. So I hope you bear with me. And with that being said, I will just get on with it. And let's see if I can figure out what Zoom does. As usually, it confuses the living daylight out of me, because it moves windows around. Okay, I think I'm in good shape. Do you see my screen? Yes. All right then.
Yes, with you in the foreground.
Yep. Is that okay? That's because I can still wait.
Absolutely.
When we're online, okay, we have to. It's a bit more like a theater than in real life. So you have to use your hands and make yourself known, and etc. You have to be a little bit more Italian, all of us. They can't talk, as you know, with you if you tie their hands. So, but anyway, this is our logo, AgileLeanHouse. That's what we're called. There's a couple of colleagues here, and it's really because we've learned a lot from Agile, a lot from Lean. And we like the Japanese signs. This one here is just means house. So the state of Agile, looking at that, I would probably think that all of us working in the so-called Agile space, we are hustling and scrambling at the moment. Where are we and where are we going? It's a little bit like you probably heard that old joke about the constantly lost tribe in tall grass. And they're running around, and they always meet strangers with the words, where beep are we? And everybody thought they were saying their name. We're the Fogawi. So the Fogawi tribe is this constantly lost tribe, which could be our Agile coaches at the moment. And later, the idea was picked up on a 60s comedy show, where it was sort of domesticated a little bit. They are now the Hekawis. Where the heck are we? Instead of that's more polite. So that's really the question, and I've sort of rephrased it a little bit like an English journalist recently, where he was asked where he asked a politician an unpleasant question, and then the politician said, "I'm very pleased you asked that question. However, I would rather answer a different one," which he then did. And so I've rephrased it a little bit from agile to organizational excellence, based on freedom and trust, because that's sort of part of our pivot in a way. A little while ago, I wrote a book called Liberating Organizations, together with some of the colleagues present here as well. And I'm on the way to try and to get this one finished, called The Case for Trust, which I can talk about at length, but I won't do it now. Just about myself, I've been CEO of startups and IT and services company. And about 20 years ago, I stumbled upon everything Agile and Lean and got very excited. Now, I come from the western part of Denmark, and we're not supposed to get excited over here. So, but I did on this occasion, and I pivoted from being sort of the CEO of companies to be a certified Scrum trainer. So lately, I've been delivering what I now call, or we call, the pilot services to small and medium-sized businesses, following them along, helping them through the rough waters. And I've done a lot of work in Ukraine, hence the Ukrainian flag behind me, which you probably saw before. And what we're really looking at is how to build sustainable and resilient organizations through freedom and engagement across the board. So it's not directly software specific. A lot of the companies we've worked with are in different territories. How to dig deeper and build and sustain and repair trust. And I'll get back to that. So here's just a quick, we'll make a situational map of the current state. What can we do about it? And what is our strategy then? That we're going to talk about. So there's a couple of links here. I suppose Morten is going to send out the PDF afterwards to those who are here. And so you can click the links and look at it. Of course, in traditional style, these things are stolen from somewhere else. The situational map is from Dave Snowden, and the other thing here from Liberating Structures, which we can, which I'm sure you're aware of, some of us. So let's just look at the current status of Agile, and what can we say about that? Well, large companies here, at least, are laying off Agile staff. Consultancies are closing their Agile practices. We lost PwC in Norway because of that. Training coaching market is collapsed. Certainly in Denmark here, you can't really do public training outside Copenhagen anymore. And there's an amplified call for the strong imperial leader. But there is also a lot of function in Agile teams actually giving value. So, I mean, very quick, this is, of course, highly subjective, and we should all do that together to try and agree on it, but here's my 2 cents. There is definitely these, what have caused this, there is these global trends based on the geopolitical situation. I believe it becomes more and more acceptable. All right, so the tough way is the way to go. You really read the strong person. I simply believe that rubs off into the organizations, that it has been more and more acceptable for boards. Recently, I came across a place where I've been educating some people, and they sacked the CEO because he was too much giving authority to other people. We want one strong person at the front here, one single wringable neck if something goes wrong. Charming. But there is also a global trend calling for strong bureaucratic control, which I think have led us to where we are. Then there clearly has been disappointment with implementation of Agile. Absolutely. And we can, of course, discuss why that is, and why are people disappointed, and what caused that apparent failure. But there has also been an overhyped value proposition from has been called the Agile industrial complex. And I believe that's sort of just 4 simple things that is on that pathway. And we would really have liked to be here where we could collaborate based on trust, that real leadership would be based on respect and autonomy of the individual. we would really hate to have ended up down here, where we have total hierarchical power-based management and Tayloristic management with big upfront planning, etc. And I suppose we could have got up there if those in power were willing to trust and grant authority. Actually, I tend to think that the main reason for all the failures is that people were not given real authority. In many, many situations, the product owners were not really product owners. They were glorified secretaries of a plan that somebody else made. And over here, it would probably have helped if we had been more honest in our agile societies about expectations and preconditions. But it was so important to sell and make money that, okay, so we overdid it a little bit. Down here, people could succumb to a pure upstairs, downstairs thinking. There's the elite, the management, etc., and then the rest of us downstairs doing the actual work. Now, if that is sort of true, then let's look at it. Here's from Comic Agile, and maybe you've seen this before, and you probably already guess what's coming now, but the Agile failure, there's a small seed that's sown, and it sprouts, and it thrives, and it's actually faster than the other seeds, and it becomes a really effective plant, and then it hits the glass ceiling. And that could be bureaucracy, compliance, hierarchy of experts that need to be consulted on almost everything, and managers not willing to give up a mandate, and people not really wanting to live free and rather would have a backseat position. All of those, I believe, can exist. And then, of course, there's also the situation where there is an autocrat at the top, and he just wants obedience and loyalty. Not particularly keen on results, but obedience and loyalty. That also exists. And so we have a bunch of failures on some that can explain some of it. I'm a big fan of Cynefin. Some of you know Dave Snowden and Cynefin. I always use that to explain maybe not the autocrat, but all the other situations. And if we just sort of look at it again, here's our drawing of Cynefin, where we have the clear, obvious, complicated, complex, and chaos. Traditional planning are okay over here to the right, Agile is up here, and radical innovation is here. And there's a lot of things that characterize these, and you can have a look at it when you read it. I'm not going to read all that up for you here. But over here, processes are really key, experts are key, transparency is key here, and up here, we resolve complexity in Scrum, for example, step by step by finding some pieces we can actually move over and finish while we're doing some experiments with others. And over here on the radical innovation, we are thinking outside the box. If you want that, then remove the box. Step a little bit into chaos and remove the box. And down here, of course, that's chaos, and they have different properties, different things. But the point here for this argument, it was a slide I just picked up, really, not necessarily to explain all the details, but simply to point out that down here at the bottom, there is the zone of complacency. In Danish, we have an even better translation. It's called den selvfede zone. It doesn't translate well into English, so I won't attempt that. Complacency is good enough, but we can expect catastrophic failure through complacency if the world changes. You can fall headfirst into chaos, and as Dave Snowden puts it, recovery is very, very expensive. But there's also another way of catastrophic failure. That is to be in the middle, the forgotten domain of disorder or confusion, the place where you are when you don't know where you are. And the problem is that you choose, in both of these cases, you've chosen the wrong tool for the context or for the occasion. It's like, what is the game really here? Are you operating freight trains, or are you doing an off-road rally? I mean, if you're on the freight train operation here, planning and predictability is everything. That's okay. I mean, but the tracks are there. They'll also be there tomorrow. We're basically doing the same job every day. Fine. But if that's the case, if we're doing an off-road rally on unknown roads, then visibility, resilience, and adaptability becomes dominant. So, and again, in my experience, many of the failures that I've seen is a failure to realize, typically from management, that we're actually in the complex domain. And there's a call for a different set of tools than if we're in the obvious domain. And there's a long explanation for that. So what can we do about it? I'm not sure, but again, highly subjective estimate of the foreseeable future. Foreseeable, that is sort of a few months forward. I think there's going to be a harder push for control and compliance. Unfortunately, I think absolutely that will happen. From professional board members, investors, government, leadership will be less and less willing to innovate for fear of risk and non-compliance. That is just until there is a certain sense of urgency. If we are sort of getting to the edge and looking down into commercial disaster, then things might change. They will change. But I don't think they will change until we face that. We've been trying for too many years now to believe that it will happen next year. I work a lot with Ukrainians. I can tell you they have a completely different outlook. There is a certain sense of urgency there. So, given the fact, what can we then set ourselves as objectives? What can we derive from the analysis, the situational map of the current situation? Yeah, I would suggest shift the focus to small to medium-sized businesses, where you can find passionate leadership. For now, I regard the large corporations as untouchable. Can't really do anything about it. And then stop banging my head against the wall, because it hurts. Then we need to up our game in communicating the value proposition. I guess many of us who've been along for a long ride here, we've sort of expected that Agile and Scrum would sort of riding on a wave and it would sell itself, but it doesn't anymore. We need to get the success stories out. We need to join together and flood the zone. I guess that's one that's been used about the Trump administration. I'm not talking of flooding the zone with that kind of alternative reality, but I'm talking about real success stories, because they're out there. Recently, a couple of us met Bjarte Boksnes in Copenhagen, and he talked to us about the success in Norway of a certain municipality that has completely transformed its administration by going agile. Now, these needs to get out, and people need to understand that they are real. Then we need to protect the pockets of freedom and resilience that actually are out there. Offer affordable support. We've come up with this pilot service, which is an inexpensive way of getting help. We're not supposed to be embedded in that organization for 2 years or something. What can we bring to work? What can we do about it? Well, I'm a big fan of giving people some practical tools to build trust and freedom as the foundational thing for Agile. I think Agile and anything like it, Agile and Lean, rests on respect and freedom for the individual, but we need some tools to build it. And for this book here, I interviewed 180 people in leadership positions, mostly in Scandinavian companies or affiliated with Scandinavian companies. Many wanted this. They lamented the decline in trust, but there was only one who had anything real that he did about it in his organization, any strategy for actually meeting it. Then what can the individual do? Well, I think all of us can, at the very least, we can extend acts of benevolence. We want good for the other people, and being trustworthy. We can all set those goals for ourselves, and it will eventually, in the smaller circles, create a change out of that. But we need to give people the right tools. These actors up here, they don't really have passion for the customers or the people in the organization. My claim, at least. I guess about these positive SMBs that we can get in contact with, we might find about 10% that want to do some things. So it's not a big number, but we've got to scramble to find them. And success stories are harder to get. It's a strange thing. They're harder to get out than if you have some really scandalous behavior or something, and a big negative. That's much more interesting for everybody. And if you are really confrontational and so on, then you get promoted on LinkedIn or whatever. Whereas success stories, and I know that from my experience with especially LinkedIn, that the algorithm simply will not enhance your displays if you're just talking success stories. So where are these practical tools? Can we do something about it? And that's actually where we really want to focus now. So here's like someone says, I need to cross the river, swimming underwater. I plan on using these here. Oh, look at that. I never heard of swim fins. Okay, looks nice, but it's not terribly helpful. That's again choosing the wrong tool for the occasion. Doesn't help much swimming with those on the left. So how do we get assignments on jobs these days? I think we have to shift the focus to those organizations where you can reach the decision maker and the people with the vision. SMBs, they have a keen eye on vision and profitability. We've worked a lot with people that have complex products with involving mechanics, electronic, and software, and there's quite a need for them to find out a way of using an agile approach. They're not a pure software company, so it doesn't work for them just to be purely software focused, and spend time on those who have an identified need. The rest of us, it takes too long to move them. It's an uphill battle. They will hear, if you recommend them something, they will mostly hear that you are telling them they are wrong, and nobody likes to be told they're wrong. And then spend time on those who have the willingness and competence to take first steps. Be prepared to offer something for free, and maybe pivot your skills so that there are new things you can add to the mix, so that they don't just get a talking head in, but you can do something for them in their process, which we can talk more about in detail. Let me skip a little bit. I can see I only have about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to skip a heavy slide, which I really would like to tell you about, but let's see if we get an occasion later on. But I want to explain to you how it comes that we've come to focus so much on trust. And in all those interviews, as I said, we saw that many people did not have any concept of working with trust. There is a layer of Ortstein, which you probably don't know what means, but for those in Denmark, you may know what al means. And that's a layer in the ground that water cannot penetrate. And there is really such a layer of distrust that has to be broken if these plants are to grow. So there is this heavy layer in the ground, in the organizations, and we need to get through that. So we've started developing a framework for trust, the domains. How can we talk about it? How can we assess the level? How can we define the enablers and the disablers of trust? And we work some with real capacities. Here's a guy from Aarhus University. He wrote a book here called Trust. Very good. And here's Angie Donaldson, a PhD from the States. And we're working with those to validate the concepts here. Yes, the professor, he has this thesis that the Nordic countries are doing surprisingly well, mainly because we have something that apparently is not that common. We have high social trust. On a scale from 0 to 100, Denmark is 77. The other Scandinavian countries close. USA is 40, Russia 20, and Zimbabwe 2, 2020 numbers. And it has a lot of benefits. But of course, it also makes us vulnerable. Perhaps that's why many don't want to do it, because they're afraid that they. And yes, the professor here also wrote about how Danes are probably the most gullible people on the planet, because we are easy to cheat. Trust is passed on in generation. On the other hand, it takes a very, very long time to build it. And we've come up with a model. So we introduce a model for working for trust. There's relational trust between people and organizations who interact. There's systemic trust or institutional trust between people and large systems, institutions, so on. And then there's social trust, which is the trust that exists between the strangers. And together they form our trust capital. So it starts with relational trust, where we working together need to have that before we can develop really the systemic trust in the institutions. And when we have that, we can then have social trust, where the stranger, when we meet him, will be met with a certain level of trust and not distrust. And that's what, in his theory, Gert Tinggaard Svendsen, in his theory, makes a society resilient and well-performing. And I tend to believe in him. So that's our trust capital. What have we done? Again, I'll skip a slide here to speed it up. And we have sort of said we are repackaging what we're offering. There's not an awful lot of news. It may be around trust, but then apart from that, we've tried to repackage it in a different way. We call it organizational excellence. We offer some workshops. We have 4 pillars: trust, clarity, mastery, and liberty. And there's a bunch of sort of 4 or 5 bullet points on each of those half-day workshops. We have the apprentice level, the journeyman level, and the master level. We recommend that people take them in this direction, from trust to clarity to mastery to liberty. We sort of demand that they take the apprentice level before the journeyman, etc. And that's really what we're trying to do: work on the trust piece, then repackage, go after SMBs, find the people who have a certain sense of urgency, who have a vision for a better future, and who have willingness and ability to take the first steps. And I would say that writing the book here gave me the opportunity to look at a lot of different things. But one thing that I ended up being particularly inspired by, and I'll end with that, maybe some of you have seen this also, but there is a preamble to the Constitution of the Swiss Confederation. And I'm particularly fond of that one. And what it says is that in the name of Almighty God, the Swiss people and the cantons, mindful of their responsibility towards creation, resolve to renew their alliance to strengthen liberty, democracy, independence, and peace in a spirit of solidarity and openness towards the world. Determined to live together with mutual consideration, respect for diversity, conscious of their common achievements and their responsibility towards future generations, and in the knowledge that only those who use their freedom remain free, and that the strength of a people is measured by the well-being of its weakest members. I thought that is pretty strong, actually. So I'd like to use that as my sort of exit remark here for that first half hour. Of course, there's a lot of details yeah. Thank you for listening. There's a context here, and I think I'll leave it there, Morten, and pass it back to you again.
Thank you. And thanks for unsharing. That means that we can all see each other.
Yeah.
So before we open up for question, got one question from me.
Yeah.
And first, thanks for a wonderful presentation. Really appreciate all the ground you covered. Do you think is there a way that we could actually team up and work together? Because one of the dysfunctions I see is that there is a latent market, for example, in the medium-sized enterprise or the small medium-sized enterprises, but it's not a vivid market. It's not a place where we have done a lot of transactions. So that means that it's like a huge task to even get access to the people we want to talk with, because they don't know why they should talk with us, and we probably don't even know where to find them. So is there something we could do as a community more systemically to to create the demand ahead of attempting to fulfilling it? Any thoughts on collective action?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we are actually in the moment a little bit like you are doing from one angle, we're doing from another angle. We're inviting people to participate in this work around trust as a specific thing. This is a new thing to focus on. There's not a lot of people going out and peddling that concept in a way. So let us help you to create trust in your organization. It's a new angle, at least. So I think if we can team up, if we can create an environment where it is visible that we are more than just one little entity. So we need to have a screen dump of this, the people here, and say, look, these are the guys you're talking to. That's one thing. And the other thing is, then we need a coordinated effort of flooding the zone with the stories about how this works. And so I think it does need to be orchestrated in some way. So it's not sort of totally just shooting out in the fog and see what we hit. That's one thing. And the last thing I would say is that I have found in my work with the interviews, going through LinkedIn, connecting people, we used a robot for the initial connecting, asking people to help and asking them for interviews gave surprisingly high return on what is normally called cold canvassing.
Mm-hmm.
So an approach where you go out, ask people for help. We are about to do this or investigate this. We would like to hear your opinion. Are you willing to an interview? Surprisingly, many people actually say yes. So I think there are some things we can do in order to get out there.
Thank you. Let's open it up, and let's try. Please just unmute and speak. But if it gets complicated, we will use the please raise your hand. Any questions, comments?
Well, one comment could be and thanks for your presentation, Kurt. I've been working with a couple of concepts, the human element and radical collaboration, which are basically where we really try to build trust in teams and in individuals, teams and organizations. And there is a crowd out there outside of the Agile community who's been working on this for years and years on, and this concept goes back to the 1950s. So there is, but from an Agile point of view, really sort of conceptualizing trust in the way that you do, that's probably fairly new. But there are a lot of concepts out there, and I'm sure you're probably also so aware of that, Kurt. And I completely agree. I also have some experience of selling to sort of the mid level of organizations, and to be honest, I've found it very difficult. So, but I think the concept, and we also tried that in TriZone, which is the partnership I come from. We also tried that some years ago to have an interview round, me and Tim Peterson, and had a very good experience with that. People were willing to open up to us, and also that probably gave us a couple of leads. So it's a good way in, and always offering some free services. But yes, I think to get that the relational part of the organizations is really what we need to look into, behavior. So that's just my my sort of, reflections on your presentation. I see a lot of the same things as you do, Kurt. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not claiming that this is rocket science or something that
No, no,
that
and I didn't hear that either. So sorry if I.
no, that I came up with. But and again, but what's just had a meeting with this Gert Tinggaard Svensson here, and he had no clue what Agile was. He'd never heard of it. So of course, he comes from a completely different discipline, and very much, I think he was surprised. He talks about at society level, social trust at society, and he was kind of surprised to hear that there were ideas about it was the same thing in organizations. But I actually strongly believe that it is the same thing, dressed up slightly differently. Yeah.
Yeah. It scales from the individual level to team to
Yeah.
organizational level, definitely.
Yeah. I skipped the slide before where I would have talked about, but it would have taken too much time. Agile Lean leadership is a concept that we developed as, I wouldn't say it's scaling Agile, but it's more how can you build an organization built on the Agile and Lean principles? What kind of collaboration? How do you build the value chain? How do you delegate to each other? How is decision making done, etc. And we have a model for that which we right now actually getting some traction and getting out to companies. At the moment, it's mostly an executive session, a one-day session that we get to talk to. But we are specifically addressing leaders who have a keen eye on the bottom line. I find it that employed managers don't really care. They want to please the board. So they want to do what's predicted and what follow plans. That's the best thing for them. But people who are looking at the bottom line and the money bin or lack of, they can receive this kind of message. Yeah.
Yeah, to quote Nigel Thurlow, he says that if you have a wage of 6 figures, then you don't have any problems.
Right.
Talking in dollar terms.
Yeah, you only have the problem of how do you get one that might take you into the 7 figures. Yeah.
But you touched on something interesting. You talked about operational excellence instead of agile. And I just noticed Aaron is on the line, but I don't want to call you out, Aaron. But Aaron and I had a conversation, and Aaron pointed the same thing out: is that there seems to be like a new standard for excellence emerging. Just like you talk about, trust becomes a currency. So any further reflections on what or if do you see that the same way? Is there like a new standard for excellence that we are facing, or
I think I don't know if we're facing it. I'm probably not the right person to ask. From our perspective, it's more like that the term Agile and Scrum, they seem to be worn because oh no, we've tried that. It sort of gets dismissed very early, like, oh, it's so 90s or whatever. It's not 90s actually, but it's so, yeah. And so, okay, there was an English commercial years ago that took some French fries and put them into a flash new box, and then they turned around to the camera and say, "Same old shit, new wrapping." Mm-hmm. And so, in a way, it's that, but it's also focusing on what it really that the word carries, what it actually means: operational excellence. So I'm sorry to say that I don't think Agile really it's not something you open doors with these days. And maybe excellence is. And some of those demands that we are currently working with organizations that are under pressure because of the demands for ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting. And it is a sort of excellence. Looking at it with positive glasses, it is excellence you're looking for in these 3 areas, and not just compliance to a rule. But so I like the word excellence.
So the way I have seen this is that there's a few interesting things I have picked up, and just wanted to ask you if you have seen some of the same. So one thing I picked up from Øra, I don't remember who said it, is that that the way artificial intelligence works is that it increases the average. So it doesn't make the good better, but it makes the bad ones better. So that's one thing. And then also, I mean, we talk about now addressing the smaller companies, and maybe we could imagine that there would be more fluidity in the current work environment. You also talked about shorter deals, lower prices, being more approachable. And somehow trust is important in that equation. If we need to meet new people more often, then without the trust and without the operational excellence, Snowden talks about crews. So maybe we have to become a little bit more crew-like, meaning that the captain and the cabin personnel can meet each other and just fly without all the jiggle juggle of teaming up and whatever, because they don't have many minutes for that when the plane is leaving. And of course, I know we will never get there, but any thoughts around what's the nature of the shift we are facing, and what is it going to mean for us?
I don't think I have an awful lot to say on that, apart from the fact that it is definitely true that if we're working in networks, then a network starts more or less like this, or in the US they sometimes call it a coffee klatch, or in Danish kaffeklub. Well, it's all nice. We meet, we talk, we exchange things, we get a few leads and so on. But when we start to decide to do some things together, then we start to depend on each other. That you, Morten, will do this, and Arne Olander will do that, because, and then we need to have commitments, and we need to have certain levels of trust. And I've been facilitating some local network groups here, and I'm working with the Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, small companies down there. And that's really the hard part, to get from the coffee klatch and get onto the next level where we are somewhat committed on delivering to each other. That requires trust. And we don't know how we don't know how to build it. This is more or less 5 years since the start of Corona, where we've been experimenting with online, really online. And we don't know yet. It's very immature. How do we build trust this way? I can't answer that right now.
Makes sense. You talked about something else. So now I made a note, but I cannot find it right now. But you talked about companies getting tougher, that you wanted to have this single ringable neck, which is an awful expression I've heard a few times. And there's a term in the complexity community which is called a call to order, which is a bit like, isn't there an adult present which can take care of all these children? And probably for some right reasons, we see people and companies do this at the moment. Like you mentioned, a lot of larger companies has been sort of letting go on the agile setups they invested in, etc., which resonates a lot with this idea of the call to order.
Yeah.
You mentioned that a little bit, like probably for some right reasons and somehow wrong reasons. Any more reflections on that aspect? Is it the right thing for the company to do, to toughen up in that way, or would there be a different way there they could increase, for example, operational excellence without this call to order aspect where they just get tougher?
I mean, call to order is an okay term, I think, but of course, the authoritarian approach to the strong person, the imperial CEO, and you just have to bow and you just have to turn the head in the right direction, and loyalty, and this is what matters, is definitely a negative. Tingo Svensson uses a term when discussing trust, and he says in any society or any collection of people, they're the hard riders that actually they are moving forward, they're doing things and so on. And then there's always some easy riders. And the easy riders will just see how easily they can get away with it. And sometimes that's okay. There's a certain percentage of easy riders for various reasons who are not tough riders. But sometimes they get to a point where they are about to destroy the trust, because they always try to get privileges for themselves without committing. Yeah. And so he said that there also has to be some tough riders that are willing to call out those who are not contributing and hold them accountable for and whatever means and I think it can be done. And I think I've seen it work in teams, small scale, that if someone is slacking off, there would be a certain social pressure from the others to balance that. And I think you can do that in an organization also with respect and without just committing completely to the power game.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes. Well, I think it's one of the classical edge cases when it comes to self-management, etc.
Yeah.
We actually have Liza on the line, so maybe you want to comment. And again, I don't want to call you out, but this is one of the typical edge cases in the self-managing organizations. What do you do when people don't do?
Can you repeat that? Sorry. Oh, what do you do when people don't do? Well, they do. Sorry, I missed your point, Morten.
Oh, it was the conversation about organizations getting tougher, and that someone had to back being accountable. If there would be people who are like easy rider and not performing, then there needs to be some intervention. But
yes,
if you didn't
exactly.
listen, then it's fine.
And the thing is that it does happen in the self-managing organization, the networked organization. It does happen for sure, but not for long, because colleagues in the long run will not accept it. And then, the conflict resolution processes, etc., start working and so forth. So it's a worry we have, because it is so dominant in the traditional bureaucracies, but we don't see it a lot in the self-management. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments while we're here?
I just see a bit worrisome trend that has been going on the last year or half year. They're actually replacing agile people with project managers, and I think they think that will be the straight fingers pointing out what to do, and they think that will be the replacement for agile in somewhat way. And that's I don't think that's the solution, but the ones deciding thinks that's the way to go, and then it will not get people to trust and help out. That's my opinion in it. Yes,
absolutely agree, and it's simply going backwards. But I also experience that's a knee-jerk reaction from when there is a crisis. We fall back to control, and a lot of the older managers that's probably the only thing they've ever learned. I mean, and so when there's a push for okay, we are we're in a fix here, then the only way they know is to exercise command and control. And of course, in Cynefin terms, I always carry one of these around so that I can bring it up and say, if you mistake and say, well, we're over here in the obvious domain, but you're really up here, okay, you're having the snow equipment underwater instead. It doesn't work. It will not work. Yeah.
Go ahead, Liza.
And I just wanted to echo you, Stefan. I experienced the same thing. Companies start asking for project managers, and they don't say agile project managers. But then I find out that the devil is in the detail, because when I open up the job descriptions,
yes,
it all the good old Scrum Master.
yes.
Okay, so somebody has to kind of save his or her ass asking for project managers, so that their management layers, okay, now you're talking, and then getting into the detail. Yeah, we're back to the way we like to work, and I cannot explain it. I just see a trend in that direction. for what it's worth. It's weird.
Yeah, yes, and it's not a solution. And they will soon realize that it is not a solution.
I think, Kurt, you actually touched on some of this, and I see the same thing. And then probably a lot of what we just discussed can also be explained by confusion, meaning like people do not really know what way to go. And then I think in the Agile community, we have also been doing ourselves a disservice, actually somehow spearheaded around a lot of the things that happened around certification, training, scaled Agile, etc., is that we have been happy to take people's money without actually making them Agile. So there has been a lot of strange practices which have been bolt-ons to old cultures that hasn't really worked well. And the latest case is Novo in Denmark, which I don't know personally, other than I didn't sell my shares in time, so I have no insight. But I heard that there was a bit of a culture where the new and the old was a bit like oil and water, and that's not the only story. And when that happens for a long time, then of course there will be an intervention at some point in time, and it now seems to be a total change of tides in the community.
We have an example not that far from me, a huge operator that developing software for banks, and I was there some time ago and try to help them. How do we define ourselves? Here we're working in the Agile way, but the rest of the bank is definitely not Agile. And we ended up using a term which I know I guess Tom Meller will excuse us because you can't use that term in the US anymore, but we called that IT group or that area the Indian Territory.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to say that in the US anymore, but the Indian Territory has a different jurisdiction, and they had agreed coexistence with the rest of the organization. But it only lasted so long, and then at some point, as usual, this time it was the financial. It's always the financial or the legal or the HR that muscles in and say, no, we can't have that anymore. This is not proper. Call to order. And now they sacked all the Scrum Masters.
Well, I see a bit of another trend is that it's actually coming from time compression. It's a little bit like when the bike has the supporting wheels on a flat road, it can help you and prevent you from falling over. But if you get to a little bit more rocky ride, then actually the supporting wheels might be the thing that knocks you over.
Yeah.
So the trend I have seen is that
you never can go back when you have these supporting wheels. Yes.
Well, I think they found a different solution now for the kids to not use those. But the point is that that the bolted-on solutions like Agile became in some places doesn't really work when the ride gets more rocky. So that might also explain some of what we see is that things get more intrinsic and there's less room for the intrinsic solutions. I'm personally following the PMO community at the moment because I expect some turn of tides there as well, because that's the picture perfect example of something intrinsic which is put in place to make everybody else behave well. Anyway, we are getting to the full hour, but thank you again so much. Anything else from your side? Anything we can do for you? Something you want to ask us?
You're talking to me, or?
I am.
All right, thank you. Yeah. I didn't want to be the easy rider, just thinking that I'm here to get the privileges. No, I would of course like if there's anybody who wants to participate in working on the trust, which is sort of a particular area. I mean, I already talked to Morten. We're going to work together on building some sort of a network where we all can go out and see if we can get some more business and hopefully do some damage to the industry. But around trust, I'm particularly keen on getting people who feel inspired by that and would like to work on it. There are some very interesting things also from I would say almost an engineering perspective of how trust can be modeled. And I want to repeat what George Box, an English statistic expert, said. All models are wrong, but some are useful. I'm not claiming we have the right model, that this is how the world is, but this is useful to, and we have some principles that we are investigating on, for example, an S-curve of trust, how it builds, and how it takes a lot before it really starts to work, and then etc. and what happens on the way down. And I think there's some very interesting concepts that we can help give people some proper tools to work with trust if they so desire, if they have the willingness. And so again, an invitation to give us a ping if you want to be involved in that. We're going to start inviting a group. We're going to have quite a load of, I believe, Ukrainians in that, because there are some people with a certain sense of urgency, as I said. So that would be my request, really.
Thank you, Kurt. And if there's anything Agility Lab can do in terms of, I mean, if you want to have like a little bit open-ish type of forums, it's actually possible to put up a meetup where you invite people in, so it's not just open, but you can do some screening of people in the good way. I mean, if you want to protect the integrity of the group, but anything along the lines of setting it up as part of the meetup group, just let us know and we will help with that.
Yeah, we have quite a number of people in Agility Lab, over 4,000 members still. Is that correct, Morten? It
is, but also in all honesty, most of those people have not really done anything for a lot of years.
I know.
It was started in 2013 by myself, and I think some people haven't really been back since then, but that's what it is. So let's bring some new life to it. It's always the right people here. Kurt, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to have you and opening up the track on the state of agility. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send the PDF to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye then.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.